We
Okay,
are
we're recording now.
going to go live.
Thank you. Right, welcome back. Sorry about that technical hitch. Can't be helped. Just before we were rudely interrupted, I asked Mr. Long the question of regarding the hours, about the extra 2 hours, and I'm obviously yeah, if you're able to answer that, I'd be very grateful.
Yeah, of course, Chair. So honestly, between 2 and 4, we would be looking at an increased turnover between £1,500 and £2,000. We tend to work on a Friday and Saturday night at around about £1,000 an hour. So, you know, obviously as the night goes on, I think, again, I said in my letter earlier on that on the extensions, we actually find it easier to manage because people do leave in dribs and drabs. So we're not going to have 100 people till 4 o'clock. So therefore it will drop off slightly. But we would be looking at, you know, 1,500 to 2,000 in that 2 hours.
Okay, and then with that, you have just touched on my next question, which is, I do hope that you have a good dispersal policy in place.
Yeah, obviously that's really, really hard. We've always given lollipops, chup lollies when people go, just so they've got something in their mouth, you know, to keep them quiet. We've got the door staff saying to people, and I tell you honestly, the first letter that I had from Jennifer, like, we just show our guys and girls, this is what we're up against. You need to behave, you need to be quiet. We are in town, but we're not responsible for everything in town.
No. Okay. Thank you. I don't have any further questions at the moment, thank you. But if I've got some, well, we can always come back later. I will now go on to Aileen, who is our licensing team leader. Aileen, do you have any questions for Mr. Long?
No, Chair, not at this point, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'll now go on to environmental health. Do you have any questions for Mr. Long?
Just one question, please, Mike.
Yep.
You said that you only received one letter from our department.
Yep.
I just wanted, was it my letter you received?
It was the one that said about music. We didn't have the one that said about numerous complaints or something. So I don't know if that was the first or second, but when Roy sent out the pack, and obviously we'd spoken between then, and you said about having a couple of letters, we only had one that stated music. And then I've now since seen one that said about numerous complaints. And that's why I said, well, hang on, we didn't know of numerous, we only knew of one. So I have since seen it, yes.
Right, okay. That's all, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just coming back on one point, if I can, Ms. Long, do you have anybody sort of come and make their concerns to you yourself?
Please, I wish. When we very first moved in, I said we spoke to the landlady of all the properties, that there's just no hope. There's no talking to her, and I think she told her tenants that it was going to be like a wine bar or something, and so then they've got the that it's like a bar and a grill with music. And that's not my fault, but whatever. So one lady did come into the garden, and I said to her, look, if you have any concerns, please come and talk to us. We'll work with you. It's not a problem, but you need to let us know, and you need to let us know like the details so that we can narrow it all down. She never came back and she moved out.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Environmental health, did you have any further questions for Mr. Long? Sorry, I jumped in there.
No, nothing further, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will now go to Sergeant Gosling. Sergeant Gosling, do you have any questions at this point for Mr. Long?
No, I've got no questions at this point, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Long, what I will do now is that I will now move on to the bodies that have made representation, and I am going to start with environmental health. Obviously, you will have the option to ask any questions, but I will stress that they do need to be questions that can be answered and not statements.
Yeah, sure.
But obviously, and we will come back to you at the end just so you can do summing up. And again, you will get to ask questions to Sergeant Gosling as well. And again, they do need to be questions. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
You can turn your camera off and mute your microphone now if you wish, and I will obviously call you in turn to speak. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I will now move on to environmental health, and I believe we have environmental health officer Jen with us. Hi, Jen.
Hi, thank you. Yes, so I just want to clarify our reasons for upholding our objection in environmental health. So we currently have 4 open complaints about noise emanating from this premises. Obviously, details of those complaints have been already supplied that we've had through an information. Both myself and a colleague wrote to Neon and to Mike Long to make them aware that our department had received several complaints. And in my letter, I also made them aware that it wasn't just loud music; it was noise from customers in the beer garden and leaving the premise as well. And obviously, we didn't receive neither of us received anything from Mr. Long up until this 10 application going in. Now, in fairness, since the 10 applications gone in, we've had quite a lot of correspondence from Neon and Mr. Long, and I acknowledge that the changes that he's suggested and proposing, and also his desire to work with us going forward, which we would also very much like to do. However, by his own admission in the most recent letter that he sent on the 12th of October, the last time a 10 was granted till 4 a.m, there was, he acknowledges, a very noisy band on that they were not able to control, and it's likely that there was a disturbance caused to neighbours. And it's since that 4 a.m. 10 that these complaints have come to our attention. Prior to that, we hadn't had complaints, so that 10 was not objected to by us. I've got concerns about patrons on the premises. You can see there was some video evidence also submitted on the 1st and 2nd of October, which I think highlights the potential problem. Also, on Friday night, Friday the 15th this week, I went out to do some observations in Lyric Court, which is just behind where the beer garden to Neon is. So I was there for just a short time, from about 11:45 until midnight. There was people talking quite loudly and just enjoying themselves in the back garden, really, of Neon, but it is just in extremely close proximity to residential dwellings in that area. I've also installed recording equipment this weekend as well, which we will retrieve and listen to this week. So I think essentially from my observations, we could potentially have a statutory nuisance, but obviously we need to listen to that recording equipment to sort of establish that from noise in that beer garden area, which is open. Well, now it's only open till 1 from Mr. Long saying, but that's still quite late in a residential area, given the nature of the area. Obviously, if we do conclude that there's a statutory nuisance, we'll have to serve an abatement notice. In Mr. Long's letter, again, he does say that he totally accepts customer noise complaints from the back garden area, and in his defence, he has taken some steps already to mitigate this. Although this is not until the 10 has gone in, we haven't had this dialogue before that 10, which is a shame, really. But in my opinion, from my observations on Friday night, I don't know that I don't think that necessarily goes far enough. I think it's still likely to get complaints from noise in that garden area. I appreciate we're going into colder months now, but currently there's no conditions on the license to restrict the garden area at all. So you wouldn't be able to apply those anyway, because there aren't any, and we're currently in a situation where we've got a possible statutory nuisance that we're still investigating. So at this time, we would be objecting to any 10s that further extend those hours, because our complaint is in relation to just operating till 2 o'clock in the morning. We did get some, as I say, the complaints came in after the 4 a.m. 10, but as I don't, they weren't all specifically about that, if it makes sense. There's been just general noise complaints since. I think that probably summarises what I need to say. I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions?
If you don't mind, Chair, can I come in on that, please?
Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Jennifer, thank you for that surmise. I do understand the concerns of the garden. It seems to be repetitive. Is this the case?
How do you mean, sorry?
It keeps going on. The fact that the noise factor in the garden seems to be a problem.
Certainly from the complaints we've had, that's the case. Obviously, I've only made one observation so far, and I haven't listened to the recording equipment, which yet, because we've only put that in this weekend, it needs to come back out. But yeah, I think if it is persistent, then obviously we have to serve notice for statutory nuisance.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. I am concerned. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just have one question. Thank you, Jennifer. It's a really good summary of the report and that. Thank you. Do we have any complaints from when the people are exiting onto the main high street? Do we have any complaints around that issue as well?
We do. Sorry, yes. So it's, I mean, obviously when complaints come in, we make people aware of them, but we obviously investigate as well to sort of substantiate those complaints as well. After I'd listened around the back, I did walk out the front about midnight. So there wasn't lots, you know, they did have bar staff on at Neon, and I didn't, when I visited, obviously it's only a short snapshot, you know, 15 minutes walking down the high streets and driving around. There wasn't any issues out the front at that time, but obviously we have had complaints about that as well as, you know, as well as music and things.
So there's complaints from the front and from the...
Yeah. So what I think one of the complaints at the front is a commercial premise, but they also have live-in staff. We haven't had most of our neighbour complaints are at the rear.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have anything further, Councillor Cocking?
You're freezing.
Sorry, I think I froze then, but I got the gist of what you were saying, Jennifer. Thank you.
I just want for clarification, Jen, you said that obviously you've had complaints come in since the last TENS that was granted for this premises, but are you saying that the majority of some of the concerns that were in those or some of the things in those concerns weren't around the TENS? Was it around other events that the premises has had, but it just seems as though they've all come in after the TENS, so to speak?
Yeah, so they're ongoing complaints as opposed to just a one-off. We're unhappy that they operated till 4 a.m. Obviously, there was a noisy band on that night, which Mr. Long acknowledges, but that wasn't till 4 a.m. I think he said that stopped about, I can't remember in his letter exactly, 12:45 or something like that. But I think, you know, it may be that happened and then people then complained, you know, as a consequence of being upset that night, or it could be that they've for a long time, you know, it's built up, and sometimes that's just how it happens with complaints. You get one and then you get a couple more, you know. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. I don't have any further questions at the moment. Did Jane want to come in on anything, or have you covered everything, Jen?
I don't know, it's up to Jane. Did you have anything else, Jane? Sorry.
I'm fine with that, Chair. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Okay, you're very welcome. Thank you. Okay, councillors, do you have any further questions?
No, Chair.
No, thanks.
Okay.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I will ask our licensing team leader, Aileen, do you have any questions for environmental health for Jen?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will go to Mr. Long. Mr. Long, do you have any questions for environmental health?
Hi there. Yeah, appreciate everything Jen has said. Thank you very much for that. Jen, is it fair to say that on the letter that you sent out, it did state that we do not need to take any action at this stage? You will get back to us if you need to.
Yeah, so initial letters, we say that we haven't got any sort of, we're gathering more evidence at that stage. So normally most commercial places, they do tend to contact us, I'll be honest with us, when they get that letter to speak to us about the complaint. And obviously you would have had a second letter, which I know you're saying you didn't receive from us. And then there was obviously you must have received my second letter. Obviously my colleague sent one of the other letters, which is where we're sort of enter in a more intense period of investigation and we start making observations, that sort of thing. I mean, what happens a lot of the time is that we get a complaint and then we don't hear anything else from them. But obviously, where, you know, in my letter I'd made it clear that we'd had several complaints. I know you're saying you didn't receive that letter. But where, as I say, sometimes if it's one complaint, we never get a diary back or something like that, then we don't necessarily take any, you know, further action in those situations. And sometimes that happens after something like the temporary event. You might get one complaint, but obviously it still goes on record if we've had an event about a temporary events notice. I had a complaint about that. Sorry. So I was a bit surprised not to hear from you, if I'm honest. But, you know, I understand you said you didn't get the second letter or the first letter from myself.
Yeah, so on that, may I ask a question of Jane? Only because I've spoken to Jane last year when we very first opened, like post-COVID. Jane, is it fair to say that we had complaints last year and that we was in regular contact with yourself and with a couple of the guys that were working with your team as well?
We certainly corresponded, Mr. Long, but I would, if the chair would give me a few moments, I can certainly find out how many complaints we've received around that time, if you're interested to have that information.
It was just more the point of did we as a business make contact to
Yes,
try to so Jennifer, the reason we wasn't in contact was the first letter, as we said, it was just one, and we'd had this issue before that diaries were sent out, as you state you do, and diaries didn't come back, and that's why we've not made contact, because we just think we're in the same boat. And that's why if we'd have had like the second letter with a list of complaints, I'd have been talking to you or a member of the team for sure. But we've had this exact problem last year and nothing came back, and I just thought it was going to be the same again, I'm afraid.
Okay.
All right.
Can I ask, Jen, that the correspondence that Mr. Long is missing, can we just ensure that he does get a copy of that for his records?
I have seen it, Chair.
It was all provided.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
like 100% happy with that, and that's
Okay.
what we've been addressing since.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Long, do you have any further questions for?
No, that was all. No, it's just, you know, clarifying that's why we didn't make contact. That's all.
Okay, that's
Thank
great.
you.
Okay, thank you. I will now go to Sergeant Gosling. Do you have any questions for environmental health?
No questions, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that, Jen. Appreciate your time and the overall on the report. It was good. Thank you very much. Okay, I will now move on to Sergeant Gosling.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
I don't intend to elaborate any further, in particular in relation to the reason for the objection that we've submitted to the 10. Hopefully the committee have seen the supplementary report that I prepared that really set out our position and hopefully set out a number of options for you. Just to pick up on a couple of issues, not in any particular order in relation to things that have come up already this morning, and a couple of other bits and pieces. Firstly, I think it's important to note that Mr. Long does have a condition on his licence in respect of SIA. He did allude earlier that he simply provides it off his own back, but there is a condition there for a risk assessment to be carried out for SIA, but of course that remains with him, so that's an important point. I think as well, in relation to the information, the supplementary information being passed, perhaps yourselves, I think you received it very shortly after I sent it to Aileen and the licensing inbox and to Mr. Long in the same email, and that was sent indeed on Thursday afternoon at shortly after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There are also a number of Mr. Long is correct in that there are a number of 24-hour premises in Dorset. In fact, Dorset is well known to be one of the areas in the country that has the largest number of 24-hour licenses. But that doesn't mean that premises do use them. And in fact, there are only a couple of premises that regularly go beyond, if you like, standard pub hours in Bridport And that's the point. Sorry, my light's about to fade. No, actually, you can still see me. The office has got one of these timer motion sensor things, and it's quite far away from where I'm sat. But you can still see me, I think.
Yes, we can.
I can't see my notes anymore, but there we go. And I think that's a really important point. In relation to the challenges that Mr. Long suffers, by his own admission, he does suffer issues with regards to people moving away from the premises and also the back garden. And I know that Jen has covered that wonderfully. And the final point I'd like to make is with regards to the fact that on this particular evening, on the Saturday, there is, of course, already 1 more hour of additional drinking by virtue of the fact that it's the clocks go back. So in effect, it will be extending the hours already. So to extend it another 2 hours, it would be would we feel quite excessive. And we would invite the opportunity from Mr. Long to consult on a license, and I won't go into it any further because it's already in the report, but we feel that it would be much more appropriate to come up with a set of conditions that are appropriate and meet the needs of the business, which is clearly to extend during particular occasions of the year to a lot longer than the license permits. And I think that the conditions that would need to be applied to the license to make it compatible to the local area is something that would be far better done on a premises license than trying to come up with some undertakings and what have you on a 10, which of course we would not be able to enforce. So I don't have anything else to add other than that, and welcome any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Sergeant Gosling. Councillors, do you have any questions for Sergeant Gosling?
I just have one. There was a number of complaints last year, which team leader Jane Williams said. Were you called out to the premises last year when there was complaints? I know it's a little bit difficult because it was very much lockdown, wasn't it? Open up, shut down. So I don't know whether it's just this year you've been called to the premises or because I think Mr. Long took it over March 2020, didn't he? If I remember rightly, reading my notes. Yeah,
so I don't have that information available to hand. It would need to be interrogated through our system.
Yeah, sorry.
So, unfortunately, I don't have that immediately in front of me, I'm afraid.
Yeah, okay then, no problem. Thank you. That's all I have to ask at the moment.
Same here, Chair. Nothing at the moment, just reviewing what's going on.
Okay, thank you. Sergeant Gosling, I just would like to touch on one point that you've put in there that around serious. There was about there being a serious assault. Is that just, was that sort of like a one-off, or do you get called out there frequently?
So I'm just looking at I do have some reports over the past few months, and there are the sort of reports that we expect to receive from a licensed premises operating into the early hours of the morning. So I'm just looking through, and just to summarise, there's aggressive customers, violent female. We did have one report of potential drink spiking, but lots of these things are ironed out, but nonetheless do take up valuable time. There's an aggressive male on the 18th of September. And yeah, I mean, it is fairly standard for there to be calls to demand, but that number of calls to demand do increase as the night goes on. As alluded to earlier by Councillor Taylor, of course, there is that extra intoxication, and I think people do appreciate that does happen, and that's why we have to have conditions that are appropriate. There are premises in Bournemouth, for example, with 5, 6 o'clock in the morning licenses, and the licenses are a stark contrast to the license at Neon, and that's because it's been fit for purpose based on a 2 a.m. finish. and that's where we are really.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, do you have any further questions for Sergeant Gosling? So I'm just mindful that Jane Williams has got her hand up. I don't know whether she wanted to come in on something. Jane, did you want to come in on a point?
I'm sorry to steal Gareth's thunder a little bit. We had 9 noise complaints made to us between August and September 2020, and we're in the current investigation system. We have 5 complaints received between July, August, September. Just so that you were aware of the input on our system.
Thank you.
Sorry to have interrupted.
That's fine.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, could Jane just repeat those dates again for me?
Certainly, Councillor. 9 noise complaints received between August and September 2020. Obviously, a summer period.
Yeah.
And 5 current complaints, 4 of which are currently open with Jen between July and October this year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I've just got one more for clarification, really, from Sergeant Gosling, just around the every TENS and every application we do is taken on its own on its own merit, as it should be. I just want to ask if you had any concerns sort of come directly into the police with regards to the last TENS that was approved.
No, we haven't. No.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, do you have any further questions for Sergeant Gosling?
No, Chair.
No, thank you.
No.
Sorry, actually, Chair. Sorry.
Go on.
Just looking back at it, actually, it was for the 30th of August. Was 30th of August, I think, wasn't it? 29th, 30th of August.
Yeah, I believe it was. Yeah.
Apologies, we did get a couple of reports. There was an aggressive female assault on door staff, and Mr. Long assisted with that one. There was a call relating to an unconscious female inside Neon. Informant said a friend was inside the club, but staff wouldn't let her in to be with her. Then, believed to be linked to that one, there was a report of that possible drink spiking.
Okay.
Call from a male who's a first responder reporting that on the 30th of August, a female was found unconscious on the toilet in Neon. He reports that the owner did not want to get her an ambulance, but just wanted to get her home. An ambulance was called, and she was. They weren't happy with how she was, so they took her to hospital for a check. So yeah, apologies for that. I was looking at a different day.
That's okay. Thank you. I don't have any further questions for you. Councillors, do you have any further questions for Sergeant Gosling?
No, thank you,
No.
Chair.
No, thank you, Chair. No,
Okay.
thank you, Gareth. Excellent.
Yeah, thank you. I will now go on to our Aileen. Aileen, do you have any questions for Sergeant Gosling at this time?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will now go to Mr. Long. Mr. Long, do you have any questions for Sergeant Gosling?
Yeah, good morning, Sarge. Just one on the SIA, if I can. What I was trying to allude to in what I was saying is that there's not a condition for us to have SIA door staff. We do have a condition, as you said, for a risk assessment to ascertain if we need them. However, is it fair to say we do not have a condition that we cannot trade without SIA door staff? It's something that we do, as good practice off of our own back.
Sergeant Gosling, you've muted yourself.
I muted myself just at the wrong
You-
point.
Yeah, I don't know if you muted and you hadn't muted. Well, yeah. Okay. If you can answer that, please.
So the purpose of a condition relating to a risk assessment is that it's intended that operators of businesses know their business, and they would know if there is a specific event or an expected increase in demand at their premises, or that there would be any specific risk. that they would manage that effectively through door supervision. With regards to minimum number of door staff, that's something that we tend to avoid for the premises that close earlier, but those that regularly operate later, who get a reputation for operating later, we tend to modify those conditions to make sure that they are fit for purpose. So there is there is a condition relating to a requirement for door supervision where it's appropriate. So that was the point I was making earlier, Chair, and that point remains.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question?
No, I mean, obviously I've been in licensing a long time as well, and on licenses, as we can all view online, it clearly states you must have 1 SIA doorman, 2 SIA doormen from 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1, whatever the conditions are. Sergeant Gosling, is it fair to say that we do not have that?
So
That's what on licenses, Sarge, it states how many doormen and at what times. Is it fair to say that Neon doesn't have a condition that we must have 1, 2, 3 doormen at 10, 11, 12 o'clock?
I don't know how to risk not repeating myself, Chair. I feel that Mr. Long is trying to make a point that is not a question. I think the fact is that if we were to, for example, if I give you an example, it's probably the best way to deal with this. If we were to request that a condition be added requiring 2 door staff, if the demand for that premises or the risk presented to that premises exceeded, say, 2 door staff as we may have stated or asked for, then it could be looked at by the operator that we've actually demanded less than what is actually required. So it potentially puts those door staff at risk, because there are venues that require, there's venues in Bournemouth that require 40 plus door staff. So to specify numbers is not something that we get involved with. No. We will, however, if there is a tendency, for example, we tend to see a minimum requirement. If there is a tendency for door staff, for example, if there is a risk assessment condition or a minimum requirement for door supervision, and we find that operators regularly look to put a token gesture, if you like, of 1 member of door staff out, then we might feel that that places that individual at risk and may specify 2 or indeed 3 if there's a specific risk. But that is not an approach that we take commonly.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Long, do you have any more questions for Sergeant Gosling?
I'm struggling as to where we're at with this, if I'm brutally honest, and I've been around a long time, but I'm struggling with this one, because conditions allow licensing or the police to come to your door and close you on the spot because you're not carrying out the conditions on your license. That is what it allows the police and licensing to do. But they cannot come and close us down if we don't have a doorman on the door, because it isn't a condition of our license. And all I'm trying to say is, like, conditions are conditions, that you have to adhere to and work to. We have a condition for a risk assessment that we've carried out, and we ourselves have put door staff on. It isn't, Sarge, a condition of our license. You couldn't come to the door and close us on Friday night because I don't have a doorman. That's a condition.
Where's the question there, Chair?
It's okay, it's fine. It's just,
I'm just struggling to understand what the condition is.
If there is no condition on the licence for you to have door staff and it is only under a risk assessment, then that is what it is.
Thank you.
I would just like to add that I would expect a bar and grill as you have to those hours. I would expect, if I went into any place like that time of night, I would expect to see door staff.
100%.
I would absolutely, I would be quite vulnerable going into a place where I didn't feel as though there was door staff there, especially at that time. So yeah, okay. Do you have any further questions for?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Gosling? No. Okay, thank you. I will now go to Environmental Health to see if they have any questions for Sergeant Gosling.
I believe Councillor Taylor's got a question, Chair.
Yeah, I'm just going to go to the Environmental Health, and then I will come back to Councillor Taylor.
Chair. Thank you, Chair.
I don't have any specific questions, but it's just to clarify around that issue about risk assessment, because I think it's kind of coming into health and safety there as well, which I'm actually working in environmental protection, but obviously as an EHO, we do have some, knowledge and things about health and safety. So I presume that there'll be a written risk assessment because we're talking about the health and safety of the doorman. So I presume that Mr. Long has in there his written risk assessment, because you've got 5 or more employees, how many you think you need on. Do you have that in your written risk assessment?
Yes, we do, Jennifer. Thanks.
Yeah. So you'd be complying with that condition with your written risk assessment.
Yeah, that's all I was trying to get across. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I just thought it got a bit confusing there. That's all. So I just wanted to pull that back in. So if you've got on your written risk assessment, you have 2 on till this time in the morning or what have you, then that's what you'd have to comply with. Although it might not say it on your license because it's in your risk assessment from health and safety perspective. I'm sure you are hoping.
Yeah, exactly. That was all I was trying to allude to. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, basically the fact of you've covered this actually, Jennifer, and yourself, Mike and Gareth. Due care is the issue here. Due care and attention, because the fact is, with licensing application, you are responsible for due care and attention of your clients, and therefore I'll be interested to know what happened to the girl that was found in the bathroom.
What I think we're going to have to do, Councillor Taylor, is move on and see if you've got that question coming back to summing up, because we are still in the process of questions.
Okay. It's just due care is my concern.
Sergeant Gosling, and I just need to be aware that there are certain things that perhaps we shouldn't really be commenting on in public, so to speak. Okay. Mr. Long, do you have any further questions for Sergeant Gosling?
Thank you very much, Sarge. No, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Cocking, did you have a question for Sergeant Gosling?
Yeah, I did. I just got the premises licence up, and I just wanted to ask Sergeant Gosling. It says on condition 6, the premises licence holder DPS will be responsible for completing a written risk assessment in relation to the deployment of SII door supervisors. These risk assessments are to be retained for 1 calendar month at the premises and made available to the police or authorised officer. So what I would ask Sergeant Gosling is, if he was to attend the premises and there was no door supervisors on there and the risk assessment was contrary, did not identify it, but the police was called to the premises, could you shut you could shut the premises down because there was no door supervisors on there?
So it would be treated as a breach of any other conditions.
Right.
So that's essentially what we would be looking to deal with it was. Just the same as any of the other numbered conditions there.
Yeah. So it's actually the responsibility of the licence holder to see whether they should actually deploy any door staff.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think the important point there is if the risk assessment was either non-existent or if it was, in our view, not compatible with the operating schedule, then we would look to review that licence with a view to making more tailored, bespoke conditions appropriate to the skills or ability of the operator.
Okay, then. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, does anybody have any further questions for Sergeant Gosling?
Thank you, Chair. No.
No? Okay. Right. What I will do now is I will go into summing up, unless anybody else has any other questions before I go into summing up. I think it's quite important that everybody feels as though they've had a fair hearing here today. I don't want anybody going away thinking, oh, I wish I'd asked that, or I wish I'd done that. But like I said, you can cover that in your summing up. If you've got nothing to add in summing up, again, that's absolutely fine. If you feel as though that you've said all you need to say. And in that respect, I'm going to work backwards in summing up. So I am now going to come back to Sergeant Gosling. Sergeant Gosling, have you got anything to add in summing up, please?
Thank you, Chair. No, I think it's just to reiterate the points. I've already set out the available options to you, and I feel that in order for us to have enforceable conditions that are appropriate to this premises, we would ask that this 10 is denied in order that a variation could be applied to the premises to make it more fit for purpose and hopefully deal with some of the many issues that you've been hearing about today. I think on this occasion, Neon will enjoy an extra 1 hour's licensing.
Oh, you've frozen.
Okay, am I back?
Oh,
You're fine with me.
I didn't get the last bit. I just heard my computer blipped. I just said, hopefully Neon can, and then you disappeared.
Neon will benefit from an additional 1 hour's licensable activity on this particular evening, and I have nothing really further to add. It's all detailed in my report and hopefully answered by your questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for attending this morning, Sergeant Gosling. Appreciate your time. I will now go to environmental health for summing up. Jen or Jane, have you got anything that you'd like to add?
And nothing really. I think I've covered everything already, really. You know, as I say, I haven't heard anything that we would change our mind at this stage. We're in the middle of an investigation into statutory nuisance, and you know, we've got concerns about the lateness of this 10.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I will now go to Mr. Long. Mr. Long, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Sorry.
That's
button.
okay.
No, I mean, I'm happy to answer the questions that were posed about the due care and stuff if needed. Just popping back to Jane's comment with the 9 complaints from last year, that they were like unfounded in the end because diaries were sent out and nothing came back in. So that's why we struggled a little bit this year, because we just thought it was people moaning, you know, because that's what they can and do, I'm afraid. So, you know, that's why that happened and we didn't follow up. But moving on to this year, they've got complaints from July through to September, as Jane said. However, the dates for July on the diary, we weren't even open, you know, and again, this is where we struggle because it's a Tuesday and a Wednesday night clearly on a diary. We only open Thursday, Friday and Saturday. So it's hard for us to listen to people and work with people when the details are wrong. You know, it just tell us what we're doing when we're doing it, and we will address it. So yeah, it's just a little bit of a struggle. I appreciate that we can't change anything on this 10, but we would like to ask the question, you know, if the garden has to shut at midnight or 11 or whatever we agree, how do we go without doing a license variation? How can we not just use common sense and someone say, yes, Mike, it is noisy out there. Let's shut it at midnight and see how we get on, as we have with one, and see how we get on, and we'll bring it forward if we need to. And that's what we will do. You know, just tell us what you'd like us to do to alleviate the concern. That's what we'll do.
I believe, and I'm sure I will get corrected by Aileen, but I'm sure that the only way around that is going to be a variation. It is going to need to be something that is written in in the license. It can't just be a, you know, it can't just be a something submitted in. It can't be a supplementary bit that goes into your license. It would have to be a variation, obviously, to be
legally binding.
Vary your license any other way. So that would be, if it's something that you would consider to shutting the garden earlier, then that would be a variation for them.
You know, I'm feeling, to be honest, I'm feeling, as Sarge said, with that extra hour anyway, with the clocks going back and with the concerns that are there, we'll just pull it. We'll just pull the 10. We'll have the 3 o'clock, which will potentially be 2 o'clock anyway. And in the meantime, because the next 10 is not going to be till New Year's Eve. You know, we've got a lot of time to get a lot of work done between now and then. We can get a great big umbrella that might keep the noise and all that sort of stuff. You know, we'll work with whatever.
So, Mr. Long, are you referring to the fact that you want to now pull the 10s?
It's really hard to know what to do because we can't work with you because the conditions can't be enforceable. Do you know what I mean? So what Jennifer wants to say is like, shut it at 11. Yeah, that's what we'll do, but we can't.
Yeah, I mean, the reason you're here today is because there has obviously been objections raised, and that's what
we appreciate those. Yeah,
what we're here to listen to. Obviously, we've not made our decision. Yeah. So I would think I was right in saying that I might have got it wrong, but I might need just clarification.
No, you're all right. It would need to be legal. Like it would have to go as a change.
That's what I was going to say. I would just need to be. I mean, if you are stating that, you know what, I'm going to pull the 10s. That's it. Then obviously I just need some clarification. If you did that, how we go from there, or because we've got this far, do we still need to make our decision?
Yeah, so, I think. Sorry, I think because we've got this one, we've had the meeting, we've had everyone's time. You know, I've just listened to what everyone's got to say and taken it on board, really. And like, so, we get it.
Okay, so do you still want to continue with this? Yes,
yeah.
That's fine. Brilliant. Do you have anything else that you would like to add to summing up?
No, just any questions based on what else has been said. Like,
no, I mean, I've got no further. Like I said, you know, we give this opportunity to be able to sum up, just in case we think of anything else that we might like to add. Anything you want to add? Like I said, I don't want you to go away from here and just think that you didn't have.
I appreciate, you know, it's tough. Yeah. I appreciate everything that's been said. It's just hard to know how to work with it. But yeah, you know, we're with you guys.
Well, thank you, and obviously appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you. You too.
I'm now going to go on to summing up from our licensing team. You'd like to add in summing up?
Thank you, Chair. I don't intend to say too much because everybody's said quite a lot and you've asked a lot of questions. Just one point I wanted to clarify. Yes, if the licence is to be changed, it will need to be a variation or a review. That's the only way it can be done. And the other thing to say is that just because something is written on the licence it is the minimum that needs to be done. You know, a lot of our premises, as Sergeant Gosling said, do have 24-hour licences and they never use them. And they're there for the purpose often of allowing these odd occasions so they can go on later without having temporary event notices in. Licenses are obviously granted right at the very beginning of the life of the premises. They may be fit for purpose then. They may well need to change as time goes on. So, but that's all I want to say at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Aileen. What I will now, I'll go to our legal advisor now, Lara, just to check that all relevant points have been addressed from the legal side.
Yes, Chairman, I can confirm that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay, before I close this meeting, I just want to see if anybody else has got anything else that they want to add.
No.
No?
No, thank you, Chair.
So what we will do now, I will close this meeting and we will go into a closed session. We will have our Democratic Service Officer in attendance with us, and we will also have our legal officer with us for any wording that we might need help with. Obviously, Mr. Long, you do, any representative, you or the police, environmental health, do have a right to appeal if you're not happy with the decision that we have made, and you can do that. It's normally 21 days, but this one's a bit different because that's less than the time that you've got. So, but it is to Weymouth Magistrates Court, but you do still have that right of appeal. And what we'll do, once we've made our decision, obviously our decision will then get fed back to Aileen, and Aileen will come to you with the decision as soon as she can. It might be hopefully by the end of today. If not, it will certainly be at some point tomorrow. Are you happy with that and understand all of that?
Understand that fully. Please rest assured there will be no appeal. We'll go with whatever you guys say. Appreciate all your time. Appreciate you listening. And if EHO could please make contact, we'll get things moving in the right direction.
Brilliant, thank you, and thank you for your time this morning, all of you. I really, really appreciate it. I will now bring this meeting to a close. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Jo.
Thank you.